Greetings, everyone, and welcome to a very special online event today. It's called
Discover Your Sacred Magnetic Voice, how to access the signature note of your soul as a force for harmony, love, and prosperity.
My name is Stephen Dyna. I'm the founder and president of the Shift Network, and I'm excited to be with you here because I've been on an exploration of my own voice in the last year, taking some voice lessons and really just starting to open to it as a portal for a deeper level of truth-telling, embodiment. And we're going to get to explore this frontier with one of the world's true pioneers. His name is Stewart Pearce. He's a master of voice. He's an angelic emissary. I'm curious to ask more about that. He's an author and inspirational speaker. He's worked with very prominent speakers around the world and has some really beautiful insights for us here today that we're going to have a chance to dive into. And I also want to let everyone know right up front, we're going to have a brand new program with Stewart called Your Sacred and Magnetic Voice that we'll be sharing more about towards the end of the hour. So exciting things to come. So Stewart, with that said, welcome to today's program.
Well, hi, and what an honor it is to be here. So thank you for inviting me on.
Well, you have such a wonderful quality in your voice, just even with the intro. And maybe you can start us off with a little bit of the backstory of how you really came to be working with the voice as really a portal to a deeper level of spiritual embodiment.
It's an unusual story because it really began earlier in life. Because I was slightly unusual in the sense of the fact that I saw the multidimensional universe as a child and found that to be more real than the material world. But what I just soon discovered was that the easiest way of being able to cavort with the material world was to move into profound stillness. So I self-muted for nearly 3 years. And in the self-muting, I discovered the power of sound, because in seeing the multidimensional universe, the sound revealed itself to me. And when I say the sound, I mean the sound of the universe, the sound of the angelic communion, the sound of certain people's voices revealed to me the wonder of the way that sound was manifest within our reality, because I saw sound. In other words, I saw sound moving on powerful waves of energy. And so I knew about the people that I could be close to because their sound waves were beautiful pastel colors that seemed to be pregnant with love and harmony and well-being and joy and love. And then suddenly there were those people who were troubled by me because I couldn't engage in the process that they wanted me to engage in, particularly because I'm talking about the educational context, because I found it very difficult to read and in fact couldn't read. And so I now know that I'm profoundly dyslexic. And also this ability of synesthesia, of having this crossover of the senses. So I was literally seeing sound as a wave current. So that's how I really discovered the power of our voices, because I began to see that our voices were associated with the nature of who we are in essence. Therefore, I began to read people's essence through the quality of their voices. And then all sorts of things changed, because when I came out of self-mutedness, I spent a lot of time humming or singing. And my wonderful mother, who alas has passed for many years, said, I really think you should be in a church choir because you sing like a dove. So let's put you in a church choir, which I thought was a really great idea. And so as a result of this, I began to sing sacred sound by copying the other choristers. And as a result of that, the words dropped in, and I began to read singing before I began to read speaking. And I believe that this was to do with the fact that I was able to really engage in flow in song because of the sustained nature of breath through the tonality of the phrase or the dynamic, whereas in speech I was being encouraged to in this very staccato way, the cat sat on the mat. And that began a huge journey into the wonder of words and the way that words are like spells that are capable of achieving extraordinary things within our consciousness.
amazing journey, and there's a lot to unpack in that. And I'm intrigued with this concept of this, that we're creating sort of a wave of energy with our voice, and that's coming to like out of our essence as a soul. Maybe share a little bit more about that. For those who don't have synesthesia or perceive in that way, like how is it that, you know, sort of our voice becomes this vehicle for a sort of a larger energy coming into our reality?
It's breath, Stephen. It's really the way that the breath is the core ingredient of our lives. As we know, to breathe is to breathe inspirationally. In other words, inspiration is to breathe in. But of course, we associate inspiration with other forces to do with enchantment, inspiration, inspirare, inspirazione, meaning of divine influence. And so as we breathe, we automatically, the whole of our physiology connects with the substance of the essence of what breath is, of what pranayama is within the experience of our planetary existence and beyond. And as a result of that, our souls become ignited by breath. The second part that I, of course, move into is that I help people find their note. But when they're finding and using their signature note, we actually begin to really enchant what the full energy of the breath is. But always when we're literally moving in flow. And then, of course, we begin to realize that sound and light are transcendentally married, and that if light downloads into color and then into sound, we begin to realize that sound is a refraction of the great light of the cosmos.
Beautiful. Let's dive in further into the signature note concept. So every soul has a signature note that goes beyond this lifetime, or is it sort of something unique to each incarnation?
Yeah, talking about the absolute flow of the universe and how we as physical vessels pick up the flow through the pranayama of our breath. And if sound is buoyant within the flow of our breath, we're onto the most powerful mechanism that we could even dream into existence about the wonder of being a spiritual person having a human experience.
Mm. So you spoke a little earlier about how there was a training in language patterns. It's more staccato. So we sort of start to conform to a kind of a more kind of versus that larger flow of energy you're describing. So how do you start to open that pattern or unwind that pattern and open to this larger flow energy of our signature note and our soul energy?
I guess it's through really understanding the rhythm of the breath, and therefore the melody of the sound as it is supported on the breath, which is often quite easy to feel when we're singing, you know, even as small children, when we're singing lullaby or we're singing the great songs of yore, whether they be hymns or songs of praise or whatever is constituent within our community. The simplicity is, you see, that when we speak, we always have enough breath for the thoughts that we speak. Whatever language we're speaking, we always have enough breath for the thought or the sentence that we speak. And that if we're moving through fear or disharmony or disempowerment, we break all of that process up. So, for example, a lot of my life has been spent working with actors. So I've been really around professional voice for 50 years, firstly as an actor during the 70s. And then a great shift took place in my professional existence where I was asked to become a voice coach. And my first client was Margaret Thatcher. I was asked for a very inestimable being who was the voice director of the Royal Shakespeare Company with whom I'd worked as an actor. And she had really mentored me through what of ways of being able to manage my sensitivity, which was hypervigilant most of the time. And so she was able to ground me, calm me, relax me, and introduce me to the power of the fact that, as she would constantly say, there's something about your voice. And so the first thing that we as actors do is that we look at the duration of the thought, because the thought is all for acting. It is the intention or the arc of the dynamic of the thought. And to find out, well, how much breath is really needed to sustain this thought, particularly in terms of making borrowed words credible. And so as a result of that, we begin to realize that if, for example, like a young actor came to see me the other day who's going to be playing Henry V, and he said, thus with imagined wing, our swift scene flies. in motion of no less celerity than that of thought. And then paused, and I said, okay, so how is that? And he said, well, it feels a bit choppy. So I said, okay, so what do you feel within your being intrinsically? What is a way of being able to literally cure this? And he said, I don't really know. And I said, well, what you're doing is you're using the commas as though they're full stops. Why don't you breathe in and keep speaking with meaning until you get through to the full stop? And he said, thus with imagined wing, our swift scene flies in motion of no less celerity than that of thought. And suddenly, for him, the whole sense of the thought dropped in, and he realized the error of his ways primarily, that he was merely working intellectually to try and read the line rather than to speak the line. Because obviously we don't use punctuation when we speak. We only use punctuation when we're writing.
There's almost like a natural rhythm to a thought that it's like the more we're aligning with that, and then we're sort of create a congruence between what we're speaking and what sort of the rhythm of the sentence or the rhythm of the form is, it sounds like.
Yeah. And in our lives that are essentially very challenged today, where we're mostly living in a very cerebral context where our voices are actually in our heads, which is a sound that we hear a lot, of course, in the United States of America, everything is up here, as opposed to being in our bodies. What I've just done is to effectively drop into something that you were referring to earlier on as our signature note. You live in your signature note. And so as a result of that, we know who you are. We know that you're a man who sits within the integrity of his being. Because our voices have always been used to determine the index of our characters.
Say more about that. So our voices has been used to determine the index of our characters. Say more about that.
Yeah. That in societies prior to the mechanistic society in which we live, sound, the human voice, was always used as a way of determining the nature of that person. So, for example, in Shakespeare, which is a language that I lived in for many years as an actor, working with the Royal Shakespeare Company, and then going on and teaching within important conservatoire in Europe, teaching young actors, and then, of course, working with professionals. And then eventually, my career led me to be the master of voice at Shakespeare's Globe Theatre, when we recreated or reconstructed Shakespeare's Globe Theatre. And that's where I get the title from. That's the title that I was actually given. And so we realized that in Shakespeare's day, very few people could read. Only the nobles could read. So we hear sound in a very different way. And indeed, a Lord Mayor of London in 1597 said that all speech was decorated silence. So it indicates that there weren't any machines around. And so when the machines are not there, there is no noise. There is just sound, natural sound. And so we pitch our voices in accordance with this, do you see? So there was a wonderful young man in a play called The Merchant of Venice who says, the man who has no music in himself, nor is not sweet with the concord of sweet sounds, is fit for stratagems, treasons, and spoils. This man's spirit is as dark as Erebus. Let no such man be trusted. So in other words, at that time, the quality of our voices literally elicited the quality of our relationships.
So the degree to which we are resonant with and expressing our soul's signature voice is the degree to which others are going to trust us, it sounds like.
Yeah, absolutely. Yes. Yeah.
So let's go back to like the sort of, I had to laugh when you were doing the imitation of what happens with the intellectual head voice of Americans, because it definitely resonated with a lot of truth. So most of us tend to habituate more to what's happening around us, the culture, the quality of voice. And so how do you start to begin to notice the patterns of where we've done that acculturation and moved away from our authenticity so that we can then use the breath and some of the tools you'll be sharing to express our natural voice more authentically?
Well, my theory, my experience is that we've all been educated into this fixation with doing. And of course, the doing part of our body is in this area of our body. we use our hands to do, but we're actually being educated within this zone, because what's been most important for us is the cerebralization of the mechanistic aspect of our intellect. So we are educated, socialized, and conditioned into just living in the head. Now, if we live in the head, what we tend to do is that we fixate all of our energy to above where we breathe and to above where we're actually making sound. So you can hear that I've just cut off all of the resonance in my chest, and I just live in my head. The difficulty with this is that I've suddenly cut off the fundamental aspect of my essence. So I'm going to stop doing it, and I'm going to go back into my essence, because the other one makes me feel very unbalanced. I don't feel that it's the totality of me, because for me, if words arise from the heart, they enter the heart. If words arise from the tongue alone, they don't pass beyond the ears. I quote Rumi. So there is this statement that I evoked earlier on, that in ancient societies, in ancient cultures, the people were very attuned with the harmonic nature of sound, and therefore were also aware of the disharmonic nature of sound. So in order to actually fine-tune and become integrous within their beings, physically, emotionally, mentally, and spiritually, they tuned into the very center of their harmonic range within voice, which of course is our hearts. If words arise from the heart, they enter the heart. And that's what we mean by persona.
So maybe take us a little bit into some of the practices you can use to start to center in the heart and have our voice emanate from that center.
Yeah, well, as I've just been eliciting, the first thing is, what am I doing with my breath? And most of us, I've discovered, are completely unaware of our breath. And yet, it's the very first independent action that we achieve as we shoot out of our mother's birth canals or are lifted from her belly. The first thing we do, and often we're encouraged into, and there's that great roar of life. And then, of course, we go through the compass of our life. And then when we reach, hopefully, very, very mature years, and with great peace and great joy, we then pass and we breathe out. So in between, there we are, breathing in and breathing out, from the first great breath to the last great breath. And yet most people are completely unaware of this. So our breath is where we always start, and of breathing really wide and deep, not just deep into the belly, which is where we're being encouraged to breathe today, which relaxes us, but breathing through the rib cage and then also into the belly, into the diaphragm, as it were. We can't feel our diaphragms moving, but what we can feel is the way that the ribcage opens. And of course, I'm not talking about lifting the breath so that we lift up here, but really feeling how the base of our ribcage widens, and then automatically we sit in our voices, or our voices sit within us. And we begin to produce this centralized sound, which is very rooted in the wonder of our bodies. So we become literally embodied.
Love to connect this in now, circling back with the signature note. So you're starting to become more embodied, feeling the fullness of your breath, centering in your heart. And then how do you find and begin to work with the signature note?
Yeah, great question. Well, if I just quickly illustrate by using my own voice, and then we can see, that's what it means. If we imagine that my range, my speaking range, is sitting here on a horizontal plane, rather like a keyboard, like a piano, we know that the piano organizes the whole system of Western classical music, the diatonic scale. We don't need to worry about that. But what we do know is that the range has a middle, which is called a middle C. Now, I'm not suggesting that all of our signature notes are middle C. I'm just using this as an illustration. But what that does is to define that over here is the treble, and over here is the bass. So if I illustrate that with my voice, if I play with my right hand and my right hand alone, then you get a lot of treble. And of course, here I am again in the upper part of my being. But if I carry on talking to you like this, you're going to be wondering why I'm doing it, because you've heard me making another sound. And as I was saying earlier, this makes me feel very, very young and anxious and ungrounded. If I go right down here like this and I carry on talking to you like this, it feels as though I'm really speaking in my boots. So one or two things are going to happen in a moment. You're probably going to fall asleep, or you're going to be very concerned about why I'm speaking like this. But if I play with both hands and I bring the treble and the bass together, you feel this wonderful equity, this harmony. So there I am stabilizing what my signature note or my signature sound is. Then if I take the horizontal and I make it vertical and I put it into my spine, I realize here's the top, there's the bottom, and right in the middle is the upper abdominal area or the heart. So if I'm literally imagining that lips, if I just move the camera slightly, if I imagine that lips are here or a beam of light is coming out of here, I'm moving through the very center of my harmonic range, and thereby I find my signature sound, which is really the song of my soul.
Beautiful. So in your case, what is the actual, the signature note?
You mean musically?
Yes.
I don't know.
Oh, so it's not a specific note that we're getting to.
What we do then is we fixate the note intellectually. And what I do is to encourage people to feel the breath, to feel the wonder of the whole harmonic range of sound moving through their bodies, so that they feel their voices, they feel the signature note, rather than, but what is that? Then we start to intellectualize and we fix it. You see?
And interesting. So I naturally went to that as well. Like, oh, so you want to kind of put it in a little box, and that's actually the opposite of what's going to lead to authenticity.
And of course, I'm a spoken voice coach, so I'm not a musician. Although I was taught, as I was saying earlier on, by using my voice in song, I was taught, what a crotchet was and what a semibreve was, and so forth and so forth. But I'm not a musician. So I'm working purely sensually, so that the individual becomes really embodied, that is seeking this degree of discovery.
One thing I noticed about your voice, just in terms of my own perception, is that you sort of you lengthen the end of words a bit more than other people, and it's almost like an invitation into a certain kind of vibratory quality, like with each word sort of lengthening slightly longer than I find people tend to do, or I tend to do.
Wow.
Have you
I know how erratic I can be, because I have a tremendous amount of fire energy within my being, and this can make me very ungrounded. And so what I'm used to doing is, as it were, seducing everybody, or if you like, magnetically arousing everybody into a position of ease, of calmness, of flow, of centeredness, and therefore of grace.
Yeah. So just because like flow, it kind of stretch you out. It's like, I do find that it's like there is a magnetic quality. It's like it's a soothing invitation to a deeper quality of relating and vibration. So it's just a subtle thing, but it's very interesting.
Well, that's amazing, Stephen, because intuitively you're touching into what I'm known for, which is the magnetic voice, that I train people, coach people, seduce people into developing a magnetic voice, which is a really wonderful thing for us all in establishing harmonious relationships, because obviously we're going through a time of immense change, as you and I both know. And at the same time, if we're using our voices professionally, we can elicit exactly what we wish to elicit from the wonder of the people who are listening to us.
Well, you've obviously worked at a very high level, with starting with Margaret Thatcher. That's not a bad place to start, I guess. And then working with many other very eminent people. So when you're working with people to elicit more of this magnetic voice, calls people into a deeper relationship. So what are some other qualities and aspects that you tend to work with?
Well, of course, our voices are connected with our inner beings. And when we move our voices into a formal speech context or a formal presentation context, most people are terrified of it. And so the first thing that I do is to use breath and sound to relax the body, to relax the individual, so that they can begin to fearlessly identify what the holding points are that are stopping them from being the mighty and magical beings that they want to be. And so there's a whole deductive process from an emotional intelligence point of view of being able to really see why we hold our voices within our bodies by holding our breath or using our voices as masks. Like you were saying, about the wall of sound that a lot of people speak through. So you don't feel seduced into or elicited into wanting to communicate that with that. You just sit and listen. So it's it's quite a journey, and of course, from a purely physical point of view, because our voices are physical means that we use to communicate the way we think and the way we feel. That as soon as we go into the physiology by sounding either through sustained tones within our bodies, particularly by awakening the whole pathway of the spinal currency, through the earth, the water, the air, and the fire, the four bodies, the physical, the emotional, the mental, and the spiritual, the individual becomes just literally, I want to use the word seduced again, so I must stop using it. It seems to be prominent today, that we feel enticed and aroused and eased into the wonder of what is most magical about the way that we are as human beings in conducting the relationships that we're conducting, to be as harmonious, to be as co-creative, to be as healing and significant as we possibly can.
The ramifications, basically, it really has an impact throughout the entire spectrum of our life when we can master that. It's really beautiful. So I know you wanted to take us on a guided practice so we can really take this in and embody it. So I think now would be a great time for that guided practice.
It seems that way. And just before we go in, there's just a very small addendum that I'd like to add about the nature of signature note, so that we feel freer about finding our note, because that's what we're going to do. I'm just going to take you through a 5-7 minute practice where we breathe and we find, each person can find their note. That when we sound our note, what's extraordinary within the capacity of our physiology, within the chambers of our bodies, is that the note is then, the frequency or the pitch of the note is then amplified by the resonance within our bodies. And the large cavities in our bodies produce lots of resonance. And this is what we call tone in someone's voice, or the harmonic range of someone's voice. So it's about feeling a multiplicitousness of the way that we are, these wonderful beings that we are, but at the same time of being really grounded into, but where is this happening in my body? And this makes us safe and secure. So the first question is, well, where are you breathing, everybody? And what most people will say is, I'm either breathing deep into my belly or breathing up here. And as a result of breathing up here, there's a certain amount of tension in my being. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to align everybody and take you all through feeling how the breath is wide and then deep. We'll sustain the breath on a series of sounds, and then we'll find your note. That's simple. So, firstly, everybody, what I'd love you to do is to just feel that you're seated on a chair rather than lying down, or if you're sitting on the floor, sitting cross-legged on the floor, so you can feel the whole of your pelvis balanced on the chair or the floor, and the spinal column as aligned as possible. And then just close your eyes so that you move inward and feel this wonderful sense of your spine open and long and elongated, but exactly, really balanced through the pelvic area of your being. And imagine that within your spine is a silver white corridor of light, or a laser beam of light that's silver white. This is the pranic cord. And feel that energy, or visualize that energy, moving down through the base of your spine, through the chair, through the floor, through the levels of the building in which you are placed, down into the very basement of the building, and then penetrating through the earth's crust and through the soil, through clay, through stone, through rock, into bedrock. And thus feel how you're really connecting with the very womb of Mother Earth, of how you're literally just touching into this extraordinary experience of feeling how Mother Earth always holds us and provides us with a feeling of security. It's her unconditional love, which of course we call gravity. If you are of a mind to, ask her for a gift, ask her for a blessing or a sign to elucidate or to illuminate a question you have in your life, or maybe a resolution for a challenge, and then literally moving upwards with the laser beam of light, leave connection with Mother, but through the rock, through the stone, through the clay, through the soil, through the earth's crust, through the basement of the building, and through the successive levels of the building until you reach the floor where you are, and then allow the laser beam to move through the base of your spine, through the base chakra, and all the way through the spine. And possibly you will notice it's much brighter than it was when you descended with the energy. If you have any images or gifts from Mother Earth, place them in your heart's secret chamber and feel the laser beam continuing up through your spine and then shooting off through the top of your head, through the building, through the atmosphere of the planet, into Father Heaven. Now we're going to breathe through this wonderful laser beam of light, this pranic cord. So what I'd love you to do is just blow all the breath out of your body. Feel the need to breathe at the end when you've expunged all the energy. And then breathe in through your nostrils and breathe wide and deep. Feel the ribs open, feel the breath deep. Pause and then let the breath go. Feel the need to breathe at the emptiness and then breathe in. Feel the ribs open, the breath deep, and feel yourself sitting in the middle of your being and then let the breath go. Feel the need again and breathe in. Check the shoulders and neck are free, and I'm going to count to 10. Just let's release it on S. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Empty. Right out. Feel the need to breathe, and when you're ready, breathe in. Pause. Feel yourself sitting in the middle with your neck and shoulders free. And to 15 on S. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. Empty. Feel the need to breathe. And once again, breathe in. And lastly, on 20, if you can, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20. Empty. Feel the need and breathe in. And just hum in your heart. Feel the flow emptying. Feel the need to breathe, and again in. And once again, feel the need, and in. Empty. Once more, feel the need and in. And then breathe in when you need to. And say, hello, my name is, and say your name. Once you finish, let the breath go. Recover. Breathing in, and try it once again. Hello, my name is, and say your name. And then once again, breathe in and out and pause and relax. And just staying as you are for a moment. Just registering all of the sensations in your being and feel the stillness. And so that in the stillness you feel you just soaking in you, soaking in what makes you you, soaking in your essence, which effectively is that we're soaking in soul, your soul, my soul, we soul, the soul. So soul is not just within, we are soaking in the great field of soul. And hopefully this allows you to feel a sense of wonderful harmony and relaxation and well-being. And feel how that sensation of essence, what makes you you, that quality of your own fabric, is contained within your skin suit. And how we measure this through each sense, because our senses mark the edge of our consciousness. So feeling, 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 the feelingness of feeling, from the top of your head to the soles of your feet, to the seat of your butt, to the tips of your fingers. And hearing, 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 the hearingness of hearing. And smelling, smelling, tasting, tasting, smelling the air of your being, the air of pranayama, and the taste of you. And then, when you're ready, just gently opening your eyes and being aware of this wonderful feeling of being completely present. And then, of course, the next question is, so how does that feel?
Feels wonderful. Thank you. I love the soaking in that deeper vibration of our signature note and soul. It evokes the image of a warming bath of energy.
So the comfort, relish, assurity, safety, security of this wonderful warmth of just soaking. This is the being of our humanness, isn't it? As spiritual beings having a human beingness, which we forget in all of our doing. So I guarantee, or I suggest the agenda of the more we can experience something rather like that we've just been through, the more we become healthy, wealthy, and wise, calm, commanding, and conscious.
So let's add a little bit more to that bridge. So we've steeped in it, we've soaked in it, and then how do we then start to translate that into how we're manifesting from that point?
So obviously when we're examining the way that our bodies function in this way, although it's very simplistic, just feeling these sensations, sometimes we become fixated with the self-consciousness, but did I get it right? Because we're used to measuring our effectiveness by somebody else's process on the outside of us. And of course, the most important thing is, well, how does it feel? And if we can reveal the way that we feel, it feels good. And so, how does good feel? It feels like this. Okay. So what other synonyms are associated with that? So at the beginning, the individual, the dear one, begins to develop a whole feeling linguistic about how wonderful this feels. And then as we step forward into the world, the next point, of course, is to carry this sensation of being into the world. And then we automatically notice that people are looking at us in a very different way. And people are saying, there's something different about you. It feels really good. I don't know what you're doing, but it feels really good. I feel really warmed by you. I feel drawn into the cognizance of your being. Hey, actually, I feel magnetically drawn to you. And this makes me feel so good. That it feels as though our hearts are open, and that there's this, for the spiritual community, there is this feeling of sympathetic magic, of empathic sharing. And then we begin to see each other. We really see each other for who we are.
It's beautiful. And so just as we kind of naturally draw others into that same pattern of depth and openness and just authenticity, then there's a sort of a natural co-creative impulse that arises, it sounds like.
And suddenly all of the arguments cease, because the ego is nowhere near the experience. The soul is just fully living in the way that I believe the creator, the creator or creatrix, Mother, Father, God, intended. So this is what I experienced as that young child, do you see? Because being in the doing world, although I was very fortunate the way that I was brought up, because my parents were linked with the royal family, with the British royal family, so there was a lot of privilege on that level. But then, because my mother was very grounded and wanted us to be earthed and not to become, elitist snobs or whatever, but she took us into state education. So we were taken not to public schools. Of course, there's a difference in influence here, isn't it, between the US and the UK? The public school here means you go to a boarding school. We were sent into ordinary schools, and what I witnessed there was a tremendous amount of competition between my peers. The kids were running around hitting one another all the time, competing for each other. And admittedly, this was at the end of the traumatic period that we call the Second World War. I mean, I was born in the beginning of the 50s. And I found it very challenging. And of course, as I was saying earlier, what was associated with this was my inability to then feel easy about learning. And the way that we were being the way we were being taught, rather, was really through the didactic approach of, if you don't get this right, you'll be whipped, because they carried sticks and they hit us. Apparently that made us more intelligent. Well, you can imagine, I was being hit all the time by sticks. So I began to have this insight into the way that, and of course I completely understand this, having been a teacher for many, many years, that teaching is difficult, and it's very easy to become intolerant or impatient with one's students. So instead of, going into the vein of anger, I teach going into the vein of compassion, going into the vein of empathy, so we can begin to understand, well, why is the individual that we're working with not able to associate with the wonders or the magic or the literality of what we're trying to teach. So I began to see a very, very easy way of being able to understand what is loving and understand what is also caught in frustration and anger and intemperance.
Well, I said earlier I wanted to circle back and ask you about this angelic emissary part of your bio, and maybe just add another dimension to this work of really connecting with our souls. But it sounds like there's actually a bringing in of other higher frequencies too that might even be beyond our soul, that can be nourishing to the planet and to others. And maybe share a little bit about that.
Being aware of the multidimensional universe as a child meant that I was actually seeing angels and seeing elemental beings, and also seeing dead people, ghosts, spirits. Did I find that troubling? No, because there were always two lights either side of me. One here that was this brilliant white yellow light that I knew was my guardian angel, my genie, and here was this beautiful amethyst purple light, which I began to hear speaking inside me, and I knew this was Archangel Michael. So this was what early life was about. So it opened me to a world of mystery. It opened me to the world of being a mystic. But of course, I realized as an adolescent that I needed to learn to get grounded and to learn the 3D language. So I poured into that. And fortunately, I was quite successful in using my voice as an actor. So I became an actor. But then, I'll leap forward in my bio, something huge happened at the end of the 70s with my parents dying very young. So my father died from a huge coronary thrombosis at the age of 55, and 3 years later, my mother died, and she was always a securing factor in my life. So suddenly they passed. And as a result of this, I was working in the States as an actor, but I came back to the United Kingdom to nurse my mother from terminal cancer, and she lasted more than 3 months, which is how the doctors had prophesied it. She lasted for a year. And so I saw her all the way through that experience. And then when she passed, I had a unique experience of meeting her soul, of meeting her spirit. And the whole of my body opened up to the mysteries that I experienced earlier in my life. So as a result of that, of course, at the beginning of the 80s, 79, 80, there was this burgeoning new age movement in the consciousness of what was taking place in the US and the UK. So I dove into that and, read Shirley MacLaine and discovered all sorts of other great teachings that are being provided. And then a friend said, well, I think you should go and be trained as a medium because you're really intuitive. You have this very remarkable psyche. So I went to an establishment called the College of Psychic Studies in London, which had grown through the spiritualist movement at the end of the 19th century and had been patronized by Arthur Conan Doyle, who wrote the Sherlock Holmes stories, because his wife was a great medium. So I was there with all of these teachers saying, but you're a medium, you need to become a medium, go and stand on the stage, become a medium. And it didn't feel absolutely right. However, being a gregarious individual, I'd met a number of significant individuals and developed friendships over the process of the early 80s. And then suddenly we reached 1987, the August of 1987, which now we know is the harmonic convergence, with a friend who'd opened a crystal store in Glastonbury in Somersetshire, which of course is a very unique center for the mysteries of the intercommunication between earth and the heavens, so to speak. And there I was giving people readings in the store and felt exhausted. So I went and sat on the high hill of the Tor, which esoterically we know is the heart chakra of the world. So there I was meditating. In the middle of my meditation, I heard a series of extraordinary harmonics, otherworldly harmonics. And I opened my eyes, and before me were 12 huge orbs of light, different colors. And I heard a voice inside me, which was the voice of Archangel Michael that I remember as a child saying, we are the angels of Atlantis, and we bring you a temple of sound healing that you will call the alchemy of voice. That's how I met the angels. So really for the last, nearly 35 years, I've been teaching angelic sound healing. They gave me an interpretation of all of this work, of how to literally work through the transmutation of holding points within our bodies that are held physically, emotionally, mentally, and spiritually for karmic reasons or for traumatic reasons, of how we can heal them through the alchemy of sound. Because obviously if we're held within dissonance, literally that dissonance is a held frequency within our bodies, that if we entrain that dissonance and turn it into consonance, automatically there is a level of healing, meaning movement back to wholeness, that the individual moves into the cognizance of what the holding point was, what the darkness was, what the shadow complex was, and moving into the light. And automatically huge things happen.
You are totally profound, and it's just amazing to receive like what you've been given. And so I'm really been blessed by this hour, and I want to spend a little time now talking about how people can go further, because you've really been given some very deep codes of how to awaken through our voice and to open to our most sacred offering to the world. So we are very blessed that Stewart has agreed to teach a program. It's called
Your Sacred Magnetic Voice. Speak with your soul signature note to unlock your power, raise your vibration, and express the divine within.
You can find it laid out in detail at yourmagneticvoice.com, yourmagneticvoice.com. It's a 7-week program. There are no prerequisites. You don't have to have any professional training or background in singing or voice work at all. It's really just if you feel the intuitive call that this is important, good medicine for you. So, Stewart, I'd love for you to share in your own words a bit of the overview, the bigger why of the program, and then I'll read out the module titles so you can give us a preview of what's coming in each.
So what I've done effectively, because the wonderment of the Shift Network course is a 7-part course, is that I've taken 12 ancient mystery school chambers of the work, because the angels gave me 12 specific points of elicitation for awakening our note, for healing within, and then for becoming transcendent within the substance of our eternal soul, so that we begin to literally evoke all of the wonders that we wish to evoke at this time as spiritual beings having a human experience. So I've condensed all of this into 7 extraordinary classes or modules. The first is called Awakening, where literally we spend time soaking in the awakening of our note. And of course, what's wonderful is that this will be an interactive process, so that people will be able to ask questions of me of, well, I didn't really feel that. Was I supposed to feel this? So I can actually be able to drop really significant experiences that are sensation-based into the individual's process, so that they can effectively really open up the breath, more so than perhaps in the initial practice, and to find their note. So that's what we do for the first point. As a result, we become unified with source energy. Something remarkable starts happening within our bodies. As I was saying earlier, as soon as we move through the experience to beyond the experience, we recognize that people are looking at us in a very different way. So then in the second module, we move into, now we've got something important. So what we need to do is to initiate ourselves, that we need to formalize in a very gentle way the ritual of what it is to be a spiritual being having a human experience. And this is when I introduce a texture of experience, which we're seeing being accessed a lot today, which is called the I am presence. So I move into the wonderful magic of the I am presence. So in other words, we discover what our spiritual sovereignty is by examining those aspects of our lives where we feel disempowered, and how we can bring ourselves into our sovereign power, where our power is completely resolved. There is no need to defend or revenge. We feel absolutely one with self. And as a result of that, we create extraordinary vibrations or radiations of energy that permeate into all of our significant relationships, even those ones that are plundered by, really difficult bosses, for example. We begin to shift the countenance of the way that they relate to us. And then, having done this, we move into a sanctification in Module 3 of moving through a series of passages of grace, where we examine what the specific aspects of a graceful conduct is in the world. Because as soon as we touch into the I am presence, we feel a unity with Christ consciousness, or with the all that is and shall be forevermore, so that we begin to realize, so these aspects of my life are not necessarily being dispatched as equally or as full of equity as they can. Maybe if I employ grace, I will be gracious and graceful and address all of this with a certain amount of economy and elegance. And as a result of that, the angels come in and they provide us with extraordinary nectar. In the engagement of that process, of course, I begin to draw us into extended chants. And then Module 4 is really identifying something that is called the unstruck note. And this was given to me many years ago by a great Hindu teacher who I presented my first book to, called The Alchemy of Voice. And he held the book for a second and he gave it back to me and saw the disappointment on my face. And I said, no, I want you to have the book. I want you to. He said, but I've just read it. They have infinite wisdom, these people. And I said, what do you mean? What's it all about? And he said, well, it's about the anahata. It's about the heart chakra. So I said, okay, so he did know what it was about. And so he said, do you know what the anahata means? And I said, no, in the face of the divine, I know nothing. And he said, it means the unstruck note. You see, Stewart, you are striking the note in everybody's hearts to allow them to be aware of their signature sound, and therefore of their song of soul. So it's examining, what does that mean in our lives? How can we dispatch this through the fullness of our lives? And that takes us then into, well, in order to achieve this, I need a little bit of help. And this is module 5, where I identify the wings of light that are surrounding the extraordinary angels when we see them, where by this time we've become aware of how the chakras function, because in order to achieve these things, we use tonal chants to open up the chakras, moving up into the 8th chakra through the 7 individual into the 1st transpersonal, where this opens. And as a result of that, we feel a fountain of light radiating through our auric field. This is feeling ourselves as human angels. So there's a further discussion or implementation of what does that really mean. And then we look at any of, in module 6, any of the principles that we feel are still affecting us on a negative level. And through a ritual in association with the violet flame, we cast all of the negative karma into the violet flame. And hey presto, we feel a transmutation, a transformational process taking place. And then lastly, the module 7 is called Touching Eternity, where we continue to explore ways of really attuning the love-light circuitry within our bodies so that we become at one with the love-light circuitry, with the Christ consciousness of the galaxy.
Well, what an extraordinary offering. And you're really going through so many different levels of initiation with the voice here in just a 7-week program. It's amazing, Stewart, what you've offered and synthesized from all the work and downloads and from the original taking yourself into silence and opening up these different portals of understanding of how our voice can really be a vehicle for our deepest spiritual realizations. So I'll share a few more other things about it. So not only do you get the 7 90-minute live sessions with Stewart, which is going to include time to ask questions and do exercises together, really experience the power of the group working together. You also get recordings, both video and audio, of every session, as well as word-for-word transcripts, which is really helpful to go back and study and work with anything that you might have missed. There's weekly exercises for home. There's a Facebook community that really deepen your experience and a place where you can really share your experiences with others. And on the page at yourmagneticvoice.com, you'll see a number of extra bonuses to enhance your journey. There's a video meditation from Stewart called the I Am Presence portal. There's a video chanting experience channeling the 12 angels of Atlantis through the Om healing chant, and a dialogue with Stewart and Jonathan Goldman called The Power of the Voice as Sound Medicine. Any of those 3 that you want to share a little bit more about, Stewart?
The Angelic Om chant has been discovered as a major healing device around the globe. You know, even to the point where in my travels that I was walking into a spa in a hotel in New York City, and I heard myself chanting over the public address system, and there they were using it. And I said, who is that? And they said, oh, it's a chant by somebody called Stewart Pearce. And I said, hi. So what it is my voice literally transporting the vibrational frequencies of the angels. Because, you know, in our history, angels have always been associated with our sound making. It's rare to see an angel in a stained glass window with their mouths closed. Their mouths are mostly open, singing songs of praise, or they have trumpets or harps. So there's a whole ethos there about how sound as a pure language of light was used by the angels to bring us into embodiment. And so the angelic Om chant is my voice chanting and bringing through the angels, each of the 12 angels of Atlantis, through the vibrational frequency of the chant. So that is amazing. I mean, I get emails from people all over the world saying, my God, you've healed my persistent migraines, or I feel that my PMT is so much more released, or, you know, I was really mourning the departure of my mother, and suddenly I feel her presence around me, and I know that there is no departure, etc., etc., etc.
Well, those are clearly amazing bonuses, and just the transmission of the angelic frequency, what a gift. And in fact, we actually have another bonus on the page too that is also working with angelic frequencies. So that's our special bonus when you sign up by midnight tonight. It's called Angelic Soul Restoration for replenishment after being in the vigor of the world. It's a video meditation. And Stewart, want to share a little bit about that special bonus folks get when they sign up by midnight?
So we know that we feel dissipated often by our lives today because everything is quaking through the great shift. And as a result of that, we feel weakened, or we feel disennobled, or we feel disempowered. And so this is a way of being able to tune right back into what source energy is through a very, very short period of time. It's a guided meditation. Nobody needs to do a thing. All you have to do is be with it and to open oneself to the mellifluity of my voice, guiding you through this wonderful evocation process where we connect with all things that are good.
What a great special bonus that folks get when they sign up right away. So that gives you an extra reason to tune in now. And if you're getting a yes, to go ahead and move forward. So again, all the details are at yourmagneticvoice.com. So we've kept the investment for this program very accessible. It's just 3 payments of $128, or you can save 10% when you pay in full up front with one payment of $349. The course is going to start on September 28th and run Thursdays at 9 Pacific, noon Eastern, which is also a good time for those folks who are in Europe or England. Even if you can't make the live times, though, you can still get the full value with the recordings, the transcripts, and the community as well. And there's some really beautiful testimonials. I mean, I can't believe the testimonials that Stewart has, from Diana, Princess of Wales, to Louise Hay, Marianne Williamson, Deepak Chopra. People rave about Stewart's work and the power that he is bringing through this voice medicine, really, for all of us. So you're in good hands, and you will have a profound experience and a liberating experience, I believe, with your voice and ultimately your spiritual awakening. So again, you can find all the details at yourmagneticvoice.com, yourmagneticvoice.com, and you get the special angelic soul restoration when you sign up by midnight tonight. So Stewart, I wanted to invite you to say anything else that we might have missed, and a final invitation for folks to join you in this beautiful new program.
What I wanted to share was how we can enter into a space of really beautiful vulnerability, where there is really genuine heart sharing, and there isn't a quality of invasion or harsh disciplines about get this work done. You know, that we can really move into that space of understanding how to develop a feeling linguistic, that where we feel safe and secure, and then move into a truly empowered state of feeling how we are sovereign in our own right, that the king-queen is balanced within. And as a result of that, I've seen huge doorways open for people in the world where something that was dreamed about but wasn't fully manifested has suddenly manifested for them, whether it's to do with, you know, a primary relationship being healed, or moving into the acquisition of a major position in the world for achieving something, whatever one's purpose is. So hopefully that's been fully communicated through as much smiles and fondness as possible.
Stewart, what a blessing you are. I've really, really enjoyed our time together. So thank you for all the wisdom you've shared, and thank you all for joining us here today. And if you would like to go further, you're obviously going in for an adventure of soul and spirit, and you are going to open some new portals of possibility if you choose to go forward. So again, you can do so at yourmagneticvoice.com, and you'll get the special angelic soul restoration if you sign up by midnight tonight. So Yay. Thank you all. Blessings, Stewart.
Namaste, namaste. Thank you so much. It's been an absolute pleasure and privilege to be with you, Stephen. Thank you.